This week, we're talking beaches. This is a tribute episode to our love of beaches and everything you can do, see, hear, and learn there.
I feel like you can have lots of different emotions at the beach. Like you can go get bashed by the waves, and that's really exciting. But also you can have that like amazing sort of sense of perspective about how much bigger the ocean is. And then at the same time, you can be like really creative. And then you can have like incredible calm. You can just sort of contemplate and take it easy and just look.
My sister, she actually found a message in a bottle, and it was a really beaten up bottle. It clearly been out in the sea for years, and it turned out it'd come from America.
I was on the beach doing some filming, and this guy discovered something buried in the sand, this metal kind of cylinder, very rusted away, and he was absolutely convinced it was a bomb. He was like, I've found a bomb. Now, we're going to headline with Jono's sketch that's entitled Beaches, Amazing for Play. But really, I think this is probably an homage or a tribute episode to our love of beaches and everything you can do, see, hear, and learn there. Sand, sea, sometimes sun, as Jono suggests, they're always fun. The artwork for this episode that's up on your screen now is that headline sketch, Beaches, Amazing for Play, and I'll include links to all the sketches that we reference in the podcast description down below. Alternatively, you'll be able to find all of them at sketchplanations.com. And if our conversation reminds you of special times you've had at the beach or things you've seen or learnt at the beach, then do drop us a line. Send your emails to
hello@sketchplanations.com, but preferably we'd like a message in a bottle for this episode.
Good, Tommy. Excellent. Thank you. And we'll be going through your emails from last week at the very end of this episode. Right then. As friends who've known each other for over 20 years, it's probably no surprise that we've all shared quite a bit of time together on various beaches. But Jono, firstly, why did you want to put this out as a sketch?
Yeah, I wanted to put this out as a sketch because having spent a lot of time at beaches, and lucky enough to have a place where we head down to in Devon, which is on the coast in the UK, quite often, it just strikes me every time just how remarkable they are, that if you were to try and design like the perfect play and environment or a toy or something, you just never get close to what a beach is. And actually there was one thing specifically which made me like want to do this sketch, and then I started listing all the reasons why I think beaches are amazing for play. And actually, if you look at the sketch, which is basically somebody doing a sandcastle and a little kid there, and there's some rocks and the sea behind, I couldn't even fit all of the, not even nearly any of the, I started labeling the individual aspects, and then one of them is like I just had to just keep writing words because there's so many good things. And the main bit, which I think it still marvels when I think about it, is having a play space that gets tidied up by itself. You can go to a beach, and people do every day, and you make a right mess of it, and every morning you come back and it's like pristine and perfect and lovely again. And I just think like anything we could make, if it could do that, would be incredible. But there are so many other things about a beach which I also think is fun to talk about.
The Etch-a-Sketch, where you use the two twiddly knobs, left and right and up and down. You sketch and then you shake it all, and it all disappears. That's like the beach after every tide, isn't it?
It is. It's quite fun, I suppose, actually shaking it rather than letting the tide do it. But yeah,
maybe the inspiration for the Etch-a-Sketch was a beach.
Was a beach. But imagine if you could get all your toys out on the rug or the floor, just assuming you're a parent, the kids' toys, and then just walk off, and then the next day it's just magically tidied up.
They're all up against the window on one side of the room.
This is like a line of them spreading across. Yeah.
Apart from that one plastic toy that floats really well, I don't know where that's gone. That one
down the hall somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it is a lovely observation, Jono, and it's for me going through the sketches, thinking right, what we're going to talk about this week. that was one. I was like, yeah, great. Let's talk about how great beaches are. Because as you say, there's so much going on, and I love the inspiration for you is being there with your family and that refresh every single day. But yeah, and as you try to get into the sketch, there's so much. I mean, I've got a list as long as my arm here about things that I could talk about on the beach and being on beaches. But what the first thing that struck me is that we probably tend to think of beaches mostly in the summer, right, when they're more populated. But the beaches are there 365 days a year. And I've really enjoyed being on beaches in the winter when it's some pretty dramatic weather going on. I think it's a great place to be.
Yeah. I was thinking that as well. Like, I definitely drew a summer scene there where it's like warm enough and you can do sandcastles and be in your trunks or whatever. But actually, some of my best memories of beaches are in the winter, or even like right after a storm or something like that, where you go to the beach and you just get blown around and there's giant waves and you
battered.
There's something, I don't know what it is, something quite cathartic about being battered by the elements.
It's so bracing. Great.
I was thinking one of the things it does is it makes it magical to like leave it as well. It has that feeling of like if you've been in countries where it's quite hard to get like a hot shower and then you come back to a hot shower, the hot shower just feels amazing. And if you go get battered at the beach by the wind and the spray, and then you come back into any warm room, you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It just transforms your experience there as well. Yeah, so any season is great.
Tommy, what's your kind of take on beaches? What's your relationship with beaches?
Beaches. Like the two of you, I love beaches, and like Jono, I've been so lucky to be going down to Cornwall for most of my life and spending a huge amount of time on beaches. As you know, I'm a big fan of toys and kit. So for me, going to the beach usually means getting the VW camper van as close as possible to the beach, so we can get the two SUPs out, the cricket, the Speedmington, the 50 different sized balls of different things to play with. I even took the bounce net. I love taking that down because you can have the most incredible bounce back games. Now I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old as well. They're so fun to play with on the beach. But as Johnny said, there's something for everyone. It self cleans, not only like smooths it all back out, but like all the yuckiness sort of goes as well, doesn't it? And it's a fresh start. Maybe that's a part of it. It's a fresh start. You can draw that line for the first time, build that castle for the first time, seemingly, but it was probably built yesterday.
There's something lovely about turning up in the morning and being the first at the beach.
Yeah.
And having, as the sand has just been revealed freshly for you, nobody's touched it today, and you can be like, you can write your name in it or whatever, you can do whatever, mark it however you want, and you just know it's going to be covered up later and put back to new. But yeah, that's like a beautiful feeling, isn't it? It's like a blank canvas. Like what promise this beach has.
And having said I always turn up with loads and loads of kit, the times that we don't, actually, you don't need anything when you turn up at a beach either, because there's stones of different sizes, there's rivers that you can dam and play with, there's rock pools, there's like what I've really learnt from being a parent is how kids are just entertained, because there's so much to life on the ground and around to entertain you. And I think we forget that as we become adults, that we lose kind of interest in those fascinating bugs that you might find underneath a rock, or the seaweed that you can flick at your brother or sister, or all that kind of stuff which we potentially stop doing.
I don't know.
Depends who we're with, possibly.
The seaweed's a good observation. Yeah, I like that, and I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to stuff in the sea, and I can get quite freaked out by seaweed if I feel it on my feet and stuff in the water. But once it's on the beach, I'm fine with that. I'll pick it up and chuck it about, no worries.
Chuck it at your mates. Yeah, I think it's a bit like it has. I was thinking if you have like a beach with rock pools and things, for example,
yeah,
and you can go check out the rock pools, you have that magic like intrigue of being like a scientist, right? You're like you're looking for. I think actually, like, genuinely, it's something that several people, including my wife, probably, like, one of the things that makes her want to be a biologist. I almost never see her happier than when she's like looking around rock pools and trying to find all this stuff, and you get that sort of intrigue that a scientist gets, or you've gone to, finding a crab. I've a really good friend who did biology at university, and if I just picture him, the image I have is like 1 foot in a rock pool, like checking under a rock and picking out a crab, and like that's amazing. And what a cool experience that is for a kid as well, isn't it? You can't do that at the park. You just pull out a mole or something, or oh, look, here's a woodpecker. It just doesn't happen. But beach has these incredible things, and a rock pool is like this contained thing that you can look in at your leisure, and there might be stuff in it. So that's quite exciting too. Yeah.
Well, I remember going to the beach with Dave, as you were talking about, Dave Foyle, and he's quite a big guy, Rob. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
And he used to just sort of go to these massive boulders and sort of pick them up, and then he'd be so delicate looking at all that, and he'd always find incredible. And I'd be like, "Oh, it's just a rock. Can we play with a football or a tennis ball?" And he'd be like, "No, come on, have a look at this." And he'd find these incredible creatures hidden underneath.
Well, there are some great things to be found, right? Creatures-wise, there are brilliant things to be found, right? Occasionally, there's stuff that's washed up and it's on the beach.
Flotsam, jetsam.
Yeah, I'm thinking of more creatures though, probably dead, like the jelly. I don't know actually, like the jellyfish.
Dead jellyfish,
or jellies,
always worth a stab. For some reason,
just get them away.
Or just throw some sand at them for some reason. Is always.
I really dislike them. I would just keep my distance. But this might link into another sketch. Have you done a sketch about jellyfish, Jono?
Not exactly, but I do have one about. There's one called Sea Jelly Sea Star.
That's it. It. So everyone calls them jellyfish, but actually they're called sea jellies.
Well, yeah, because they're not fish, and starfish aren't fish either. So technically, you should call them sea jellies and sea stars.
Yeah,
nobody does.
Tiny crabs, I don't mind running around, and then they pop down into the sand. Yeah. They'll go between little holes and scurrying around. They're quite fun. Yeah. You know the little like squiggly sand piles you see sometimes. What are they called? Casts, worm casts, right? You see them in mud as well, like in the park and stuff. But on the beach, you see them a lot, left by lugworms. But they actually look like they're creatures themselves, I've always thought.
Yeah, all these little creatures sitting around the top, yeah. But they're the traces of creatures, which is kind of fascinating too, isn't it?
It is. The trace and the presence of all this marine life, which, I guess you wouldn't call lugworms marine life, would you? Because they live in the sand.
Can I just say with the jellyfish?
Yeah.
Sorry, the sea jellies.
Yeah.
Well, one of the most memorable times I remember having at the beach was it was after a big storm, and for some reason there was like a whole load of Portuguese man-of-war jellyfish.
Where was this?
Jellies. This was in Devon, and which are they have quite serious stings, but there was huge numbers of them that all got washed up in this storm. And so we came to the beach that morning, and everywhere you looked, like, separated by a foot or two maximum, was a Portuguese man-of-war sea jelly just right there, and they're incredible, like purpley blue colour. Not very big, but their tentacles can go a really long time. But I can see the face you're making, Rob. But for me, I remember it was fascinating. I was like, wow, I've never seen these things so close, and they were everywhere. It was incredible.
Would they die just left up on the beach? Do you know?
Yeah, they all died. So we were there in the morning, and then they still all had a lot of colour and stuff. But if you were there in the afternoon, they'd sort of dried out a bit. But I thought it was really amazing.
You have given
me
nightmares tonight.
And I presume the following day they were all just washed away.
They probably were. They probably cleaned up by the beach. There was one thing I was going to, I think, keeps people going back to the beach. Also, is the like both the variation. So not only, as you say, it's different in winter to summer, but it's different tomorrow from today. And one day I turn up and I get Portuguese man of war, another time I turn up and you get incredible shell. And you have that. I know humans people are always bewitched by intermittent rewards, I always think. And so like that time where, so you go into something and sometimes you get something amazing.
Yeah.
But not all the time, and just occasionally. But it might be this time, and that's just so captivating. Like this time might be the time where I kick my foot and find like a World War II artifact on the beach, or like, oh, I found that incredible crab, or I found that incredible sea jelly, because it's happened. Those things have happened once or twice when you've gone to the beach. So you're like, oh, maybe this time there's going to be something incredible.
Or a message in a bottle to hello@sketchpromotions.com. you never know what. We did genuinely find a message about in Portugal one year. My sister, a couple of years younger, she actually found a message in a bottle, and it was a really beaten up bottle. It clearly been out in the sea for years, and it turned out it'd come from America.
What did the message say?
It said,
did you read it?
Yeah, you could read it, and I think it had a postal address or a phone number, and somehow my sister or my dad got in touch, and they found out that it had been put in the sea by some kid 9 months earlier, and it got all the way around to Portugal. But as you say, Jono, those are the kind of rewards that, and also on the beach, you tend to get something cool almost every time. Because driftwood is kind of cool.
Driftwood's great. Yeah, there's so much texture to it, to driftwood, which I absolutely adore. I could just stand there and touch it and take it all in and observe it from every single angle. Driftwood's amazing, absolutely brilliant stuff. But speaking of World War II artifacts, I think this was probably the last time. No. I was on the beach this summer with work, doing some filming up near Middlesbrough, up in the northeast of England, and they've got beautiful beaches up there. And we were filming some stuff early morning on the beach. There's loads of dog walkers out. And this guy was he seemed quite agitated. I think he'd been out surfing or swimming, and he came back to his stuff, and he seemed quite agitated. It turned out he discovered something buried in the sand, this metal kind of cylinder, very rusted away, kind of rounded edges, and he was absolutely convinced it was a bomb. He was like, I've found a bomb buried in the sand. That's kind of, the sea's revealed it, half buried. So he's like,
did he still have his foot on it? And he was like, no. And I don't know what to do.
I say agitated. He was agitated, but quite pleasantly excited by this as well. So he rang the police, and the police came down and they had a look, and then a load of more police guys came, and they might have been bomb disposal. They came in their trucks and their vans, and they had their overalls and stuff on. It turns out, because they dug it up, it was it looked like an oil filter from like a diesel engine from a boat, basically. But it was interesting. It was interesting.
You got the thumbs up.
I did get a thumbs up. Yeah, it was interesting. And as you say, who knows what you're going to find on the beach? It's great.
It's brilliant. I think that finding is just sort of so naturally fun for all of us. I was thinking, like kids love it, but like a beach is really like egalitarian. Like everybody enjoys a beach, like male, female, young, old. There's just things for everybody on a beach.
That's a nice observation, Jono. Yeah.
I think, if you want to leg it around and throw balls and kick footballs, you can. But if you want to just take your time and run your feet through the sand and look for shells, you can do that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you want to get in your wetsuit and go surfing, you can do that. Or if you just want to jump the little waves at the front, you can do that. It's a lovely thing for like everybody, like all the family can enjoy their time at the beach.
For some reason, I also find that you can make up rules. Like the rules don't apply on beaches in terms of, like, I obviously love playing sports, so
just get naked.
But sorry, I meant in terms of,
with me.
Like, if you go to a tennis centre, you have to play tennis with the rules of the game, as in there's a court, and there's the thing.
Right, yeah.
And if you go to a volleyball, and if you go to a golf club, and if you go to places like, you have to follow the rules, so to speak. But if you start playing a ball game on the beach, you can play any kind of rule, like cricket. You know, the rules, you know, you have any length of wicket, any sort of rule for who's in next, who's out.
Very malleable rules.
And tennis, and you can just sort of change them as you go along, and it's sort of really freeing to kind of just make up any kind of game.
Do you remember, I remember, you know, playing pool, right? Or petanque or whatever. And you can play that. A lot of people play that at the beach because, you know, obviously it makes sense. And we've played it a lot just generally. But one of my favourite memories there was playing ball, and then we just kept on getting closer to like the rocks, and there were divots in the sand and everything. And we just carried on playing, and you're like, and then now you can play ball and you throw it and it's landed in like this little divot in a rock which is raised up, and see how close you can get. And that's brilliant. And as you say, like everywhere else you play, you just play to the rules, stand behind the line.
Yeah.
And to
like
take that
country. Cool.
So the ball I'm thinking about when you go to the beach is the pack that comes like in this almost this plastic net, this plastic cage that opens up, and they're coloured plastic balls, right? Is that that's the one we're all thinking of?
Everyone
right?
of a certain age, I think, had one of those kits.
Exactly.
And still probably does.
And so off the back of Jono's, and I don't know if this is what you're thinking about, Jono, but we're getting closer to the rocks once, to the point where it actually started hitting the rocks as like almost a backboard, and we discovered these things are actually quite bouncy.
Yeah.
So then we started playing, well, you have to go off the rocks, to your point, Tommy, where you can just change the rules. You have to go off the rocks. And then it got a bit out of hand, and it turns out that they're not built for smashing into rocks and bouncing.
No.
But they did bounce for a good half hour or so. But
They've got a lot of water
then they
inside
broke.
them, don't they, I think?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a shame. It's almost like what were we doing?
Took it too far.
Yeah, like last week. Where
the generalised
Peter's
Peter principle.
The generalised Peter principle.
Yeah.
We would generally Peter principle the heck out of those coloured petanque balls.
So anything that works will gradually be used until it fails.
until the incompetent person who hands it in fails. Yeah.
There's a lot of that because you see a lot of boats massively overloaded, or a lot of spades being used for totally unsuitable things, and that's
at the beach.
Name of the game on the beach, right?
Yeah. In your sketch, Jono, there's a beautiful sandcastle being built. Is that something we, as a podcast trio, enjoy doing at the beach? I do. I love it.
I was going to say, I think because actually in my picture I've got like there's a child and like a parent, and it's the parent building the sandcastle because I think that's just so classic. It's right. Okay, let's the kids like building sandcastles. Right, this is going to be the biggest sandcastle ever. Yeah. And it's just one of our friends I just envisaged with like the strongest spade, and he's dug.
So I've got
10 meters of sand
and the deepest tunnel.
On this. Metal detector spades are the best for the beach. We've met some people who had these incredible. So metal detector, they're about sort of 2 or 3 foot long metal ends, and they're also designed to not wear in the water, the salt water. And boy, when you've got a couple of those, you can really create monsters compared to the plastic spades. I do find, Jono and Rob, to your point, that sometimes the kids just want to like have a bit of fun, but then you turn up and you're right. If we're going to do this, it's going to be proper. And they're like, Dad, can we go? No, we're digging this. It's going to be. No, Jack, where are you going? Get back here.
Some of the most disappointing beaches I've been on are probably beaches that within your holiday brochure are some of the best beaches, because the sand's just not right for making sandcastles. It's too fine, it's too dry, it just kind of falls through your hands. What you want is a bit sticky, a bit wet. You want the right grain size, which I think in the UK on the whole we do quite well with on our beaches, the right sand for making sandcastles.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I did this, like a lot of the aspects of a beach which I think would strike me as amazing for play come from like UK beaches, and I can totally recognise to some people like UK and beaches just feel like they don't go together, right? Because of the weather. And I had a long discussion with a friend of mine who was Greek, and so he lived in Athens, and so all he knew was Greek beaches, and so he was obviously adamant that Greek beaches were far superior in every way to UK beaches. And And it's funny when I do, obviously, if you get to the chance to go to the Greek beach, brilliant, and the water's gorgeous and everything. But
Stop slagging off Greek beaches so much, Jono.
But they're so different. They're so different, and there's so many different things that you can do on that kind of beach than a sandcastle kind of beach or a rock pool kind of beach. Some beaches, and some of the ones I've been to in Greece a long time ago, they were just like sunbathing beaches, sunbathing and lie in a lilo, and maybe you could knock a little ball around or something, but there was no space. Whereas some of the beaches, and I'm thinking of ones like in Wales, for example, like Rosilly Beach, is like genuinely an
enormous,
absolutely spectacular place. Like you look at this beach and it just goes on for miles, and it takes 10 minutes to walk to the sea. But you've got this incredible spaces, and so beaches vary so much, don't they? And so I think of beaches where you can make sandcastles, and that's like one of the fun things to do. But a lot of beaches you can't.
At this point, should we introduce into the equation your friend of mine, the Pebble Beach? Stony, rocky Pebble beaches, a different kind of beach.
I mean, you don't get as messy. They have that advantage.
No. Yeah, you don't tend to run around as much.
Certainly not with bare feet.
Do you like getting out of the water, having done a swim, getting out or trying to get out up a slope on a pebble beach is one of the most painful things.
You do that walk of does it make any difference, the walk that you do, to kind of minimise the force going through your feet?
It's going to hurt.
It's quite a funny little compilation of like a video just watching people try and make their way up a stone beach and all the funny movements you have to do to not make it.
So painful.
Actually, doesn't matter how good you look walking out of the water, because you're going to walk up the pebbles and look like an idiot.
The weather thing really reminds me of a story. We had a girl come and work for us who was from France. We knew her mother, and so she was coming over to do some, like a French exchange, right? And we were going down to Cornwall, and it was like, cool, you come with us. She was like 18, 19-year-old. So she kind of packed her bikini and all this sort of stuff. And we got down to Cornwall, and it wasn't a particularly nice week. It was fairly, a bit drizzly and a bit there. And she'd only really bought one coat and one pair of trousers. And the poor girl absolutely froze. She literally wore all the clothes she'd brought to the UK.
Because you were sat on the beach in a rain jacket. Like, this is nice.
Yeah, exactly. And all the swimsuits she brought, all that sort of stuff, completely useless. Her French beach experience was very different to this particular Cornwall week's beach experience, where we were obviously walking and not really going in the sea and just building stuff to stay warm, as opposed to what you might normally do in the south of France.
It's funny, it's a very stereotypical image, like a couple in a cagoule on a beach, in your waterproof.
And the windbreak.
British image, sorry.
Yeah.
The windbreak. I don't think I've seen windbreaks on beaches in any other countries. I don't think I have.
Because you only go down when the weather is nice. I mean, we were in Italy one time, and it was April, and so for Italy it was not warm. But actually, the water there was warmer than it ever gets in the UK. And so I was like, we were paddling, and I was like, I'm quite tempted to go for a swim here. And it was a bit breezy. And then two Italians walked by walking their dog, and they've got these big winter jackets, fluffy hoods, looking at us like we're crazy. And I'm like, it's warmer right here than it ever is.
Boiling.
But yeah, oh well.
Another one of your sketches, Jono, that is beach related that I really enjoyed is the different types of surf breaks. And I think you've included 3 on that sketch, 3 types of wave breaks that you will see at various beaches. One's the beach breaks, where the shallowing of the water creates a wave as it comes in. Another one is a point break, where you've got a point out, normally on the end of the beach, maybe a rocky outcrop. Would it be a rocky, or we call it a little headland, that creates a break, and those waves kind of sweep across the beach sideways. And what's the third one?
Also a fantastic film.
Point Break.
Canaries from the late 80s. Yeah.
A reef break. where there's a reef further out from the beach, which suddenly creates a difference in depth, and the water gets popped up, so you get waves breaking a bit further out. That's a really, really nice one. I like that sketch. It's really nice.
Yeah,
I remember when I first started surfing, those were some of the basics that you learn about the water.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of nice to look out at waves and try and, I don't know, obviously surfers know this stuff because that's how you know where's good spots to surf. But, you know, it's quite nice to look out and try and figure out what's going on and why. And I remember looking at waves and going, well, you know, what causes them to break and why do they do that interesting pattern? There's another sketch called Anatomy of a Wave, a really old one, which talks about the crest and the amplitude and the wavelength and how it changes as it runs up over the sea floor and it bunches up, and so the waves get higher as the sea floor rises, and then at one point the top starts to overtake the bottom, and so I think a wave will start to break at a depth of about 1.3 times the height of the wave. So it depends on the height of, how much water is underneath the wave to how high the wave is. You can sort of figure out when it's going to break. It's quite interesting.
Yeah,
looking at the beach and sort of figuring out these things. It's so fundamental. And the other thing, I've never done one, but just the very fact is still a bit crazy to even say it. That I remember as a kid when somebody told me like the tides are caused by the moon, and you're like, what are you talking about? That little tiny little thing over there. How on earth is that doing that? And then you have that view where you're like, oh wow, the whole of the ocean is getting pulled by the gravity of the moon in this direction, and just like a bath just getting pushed over to one side. It's just incredible to think about these things.
It is awesome thinking of things on that scale, right? Absolutely. Wow. What?
Yeah.
And I find tides are something that if you don't live near the coast, this is from my own personal experience, this is highly anecdotal, but from not living near the coast, tides are something that I didn't really appreciate or understand the importance of on a day-to-day basis until not that long ago, really. But when you do spend a bit of time there, you realise, this is really, really important. If you want to do something down at the beach, surf, swim, play on the sand, you kind of need to know what the tides are doing. Because I've been caught out a few times.
There's quite a few. We went to a little pub where the car park is the beach, and they say check the tide times because otherwise your car is going to get washed away. So,
well, the flip side of that is I went down to a beach in Kent. Is it Kent or Sussex? Sussex. I went down to a beach on the south coast of the UK. On the flip side of that, Jono, I went for a swim. It's a place called Camber Sands. I went to go for a swim. When I got there, I didn't check the tide. I thought, it's a beach, there'll be water. The tide was so far away because it's a really, really shallow beach. It took about 20 minutes to walk to even get your feet wet. And then to get to a depth where you could actually swim, i.e. up to your waist, was another 10 minutes of wading out. So I completely misjudged that. And in the end, I just kind of sat in the water floating around for a bit. This is rubbish. And I've got a half-hour walk back to the really top of the beach.
Way. Conversely, the tide comes in very quick there. And I think Camber Sands can be quite a dangerous beach because of the speed that the tide comes in, and it completely can catch people.
It can.
But yeah, that's how you get those giant beach like Rosilli, where it's just super flat for miles, whereas a lot of the Mediterranean beaches tend to shelve off much quicker, so the beach itself is much smaller, and there's also less tide. Fewer tides.
Less tidal, less tidal range.
Exactly. So you don't notice it so much there.
You can't get out of the bath.
We're so careful. One beach I've been on with you, Tommy, down in the southwest of France, when we were learning to surf, was a very steep beach.
Yes.
And it was a beach break where we were trying to surf, where to the point where you'd get on the wave, if you're lucky enough to get onto the wave, like 2 seconds later you were being dumped onto the sand because the waves were breaking so close to the beach.
Onto the beach. I think I actually managed to once get up and discovered I was basically standing on the beach because I'd got onto the wave, and then the wave had dumped onto the beach, and I was like standing on a board on the beach, going, "How did it happen?"
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
Different types of beaches. At the risk of this is just one story or another, but Jono, another time I was on a beach with you in the south of France. Absolute mayhem. The start of Ironman France. We're on the beach, and you're going to go for a swim. Lovely, go for a swim. We did lots of swimming, but there's 2,000 other people getting in the water with you at the same time at the same place, and it's scary.
That was mental, wasn't it?
I remember watching that, and I was terrified just watching it. It was like a million salmon got in the sea at the same time, just started hitting each other,
bashing
as
each
I
other,
could work out.
Knocking your
like
goggles off.
Closed fist swimming.
Literally swam directly over the top of you. You wouldn't think it was possible, but it turns out it is.
If you pack enough humans together tightly enough, it becomes a liquid. And you can swim through it.
It's probably faster just grabbing other people and pulling over the top of them.
Just some memories from beaches there. Different beach times I've been on beaches with you boys. I'm going to bring it on to another one of your sketches, Jono, and we've talked about this a little bit, the clearing of the beach, but I get this, maybe this is the flip side of the not clearing of the beach, the Strand Line. Talk us through the Strand Line and your sketch for that, because it's a beautiful sketch again. It's a really kind of big vista sketch.
Yeah, and I remember doing it, and actually it was based on a beach we went to in Kent, where we unexpectedly, because we hadn't really planned to go to the beach, just had a really, really lovely day. That was one where you end up in the water in your pants because you didn't really expect to go to the beach, that kind of thing.
Swim.
Yeah, and it had a really noticeable strand line, and so the sketch is essentially the line of stuff, which is the high point of the tide, where it deposits all the seaweed and the shells and things, and then it starts coming back down again. And so you often get this little line of debris that you can sort of walk along and look for things, which is interesting because actually, like, I don't know, you might assume that it would leave stuff at every point, not just at the high point, but it doesn't. And so you get this really, really lovely line which shows you like the history of the tide and what's been going on, and gives you a place to look for stuff. I remember when I put it out, actually, I wrote that the line is where debris is stranded by high tide, because it kind of makes sense as
called the Strand
stranded
Line.
But of course, strand means beach in many languages, like Dutch, for example. And so that is actually the name for a beach, is a strand. And I've not looked into it since then. But is there a link between being stranded
and being beached?
Yeah, being beached.
And so I actually don't know. I wrote it stranded by the high tide because it makes sense, but it might not be the derivation of it. It might just be like, this is the line on the beach. But anyway, it's a lovely little spot and a feature of a beach, I think.
Well, so then I'm going to link that to a time where, so in a way that strand line is, as you're saying, like kind of, it's sweeping debris up to a point, and then everything between that and the sea is clean once the tide's gone back out again. The other time I've been on a beach that has been incredibly clean was because, with a group of friends, and you were both there, we cleaned it. So this was for a mutual friend's wedding, and the wedding was happening on the beach in the Channel Islands, a tiny little island called Herm. And we're on the beach, and that morning we were out there with rakes and brushes, and we were moving any debris, any rocks, so that it would be this pristine beach. I mean, it was quite pristine. I'd never done that before. I'd never raked a beach before. It seemed like an odd thing to be doing, but the effect was really lovely in the end.
It's a different type of clean, isn't it? It's like it's not necessarily the natural clean, like walking on the woodland, but it's like a lawn sort of clean.
It is.
Where it's like, this is immaculate.
This is manicured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an English country garden kind of.
Yeah. It was an English country beach. Doesn't make sense. Scrap that. But it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
That was a gorgeous day.
Because if you play football on the beach, right, you're generally barefoot, right? And there is a risk that you can stub a toe on a little rock or a stone or something, and that hurts so much.
Do you remember Choppy going in for that tackle and basically ripping his entire shin skin off? That was just the most painful thing I've ever seen.
Standard.
Yeah. Beach sports can. In the original sketch, you talk about there being the sand being a place of soft landing. It can be.
It can be.
And it's relative. It's all relative, isn't it? It can also be quite hard and quite abrasive.
Yeah.
I mean, they use it for. Well, they use it as they use the abrasive qualities of sand are used on an industrial scale, right? It's called sandblasting.
This is true.
And sandpaper.
And sandpaper, yeah.
But if you leave kids on a beach, they'll probably start jumping at some point.
Yes.
And that you don't do that in concrete quite the same way that you do
absolutely
on a beach. So I know what you mean. I mean, it's just like water can be hard and
yes.
Snow can be very hard, but they can. Yeah. They also have their soft aspects. So it's a bit more forgiving, I suppose. Forgiving might be better than a soft landing.
There are the largest sand dunes in Europe are called the Dunes de Pila, and they're down the southwest of France near Bordeaux, and they're massive, absolutely massive. And you can get to the top, and there's quite a sharp drop off on one side, so you can kind of run and launch yourself off the top of the sand dune, and the sand up there is really, really soft. So you land, and it's like being a soft play. It's lovely. Yeah,
there's even more stuff that a beach has going for it, isn't it? I was trying to think. Are there any other environments that have that variation? Like a woodland is lovely, and you can play in a woodland. Fields and gardens are nice. Mountains are nice. Snow is nice, but none of them have the same
snow
like
is a bit
amount
more
of
than nice. I'd think mountains and snow are up there with sand and beaches.
But snow, you have to.
Oof, we're on a tricky one here.
Yeah, but it's like, first of all, it's really cold, so you have to dress up for it, and you have to you might get really cold. You also a lot of the fun you have might be if you have to take equipment with you to have that fun. Like you have to walk up a mountain, which is really hard work, and you have to you might take skis or something, and then you have to buy all that stuff. Beaches,
I just draw parallels.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think snow is lovely, but I think there's just more. I mean, you don't have all the animals at beaches. No, you don't have the equivalent of rock pools at the beach. You can make snow castles, but you don't. Partly because it's too cold after a while. It doesn't tidy up in quite the same way as it does on a beach, which really tidies up.
Who knew this episode was going to turn into a beach versus mountains?
It wasn't a first.
Jono debating.
Tom, you tell me. I was trying to think. Is there any other place? Is there any place which has it as much?
Oh God, stop calling me.
As a beach? I'm not sure there is.
We've talked a lot there, boys. We've talked a lot about the many different things that we've enjoyed doing on beaches, the stuff we enjoy seeing, the stuff we've enjoyed doing. But what about the way beaches affect you emotionally? Anything that you've kind of noticed or are aware and conscious of in terms of how you feel when you're at a beach or after you've had the day on the beach, whatever it might be?
Yeah, for me, I feel like it changes, and that's what's also again magic about the beach. I feel like you can have lots of different emotions at the beach. Like you can have the adrenaline. Like I remember there's a cave at our beach. It was really exciting to go explore the cave, and you can go get bashed by the waves, and that's really exciting. But also, you can have that amazing sort of sense of perspective about how much bigger the ocean is than anything. It just really puts you in your place going to a beach and looking out at the horizon. And then at the same time you can be really creative at the beaches, playing in sand is super creative. And then you can have like incredible calm at beaches too, can't you? Like you can just sort of contemplate and take it easy and just look. And so I feel like I get all of those emotions from beaches at different times, which is wonderful.
What you said there, Jono, really chimes with me. You can just look. And there's very little I enjoy doing more than just sat on a bit of driftwood on the beach. Maybe it's a bit chilly and you're wrapped up nice and warm. You got a cup of tea with you or something, and you just look. And my mind's completely blank. It's completely clear, and I'm just enjoying what is happening around me. And I think I think the reason and the time of day when I probably tend to do that the most when I am at a beach environment is at sunset, because I might have gone to the beach to watch the sunset. I might not have as compelling a reason to go and just do that at other times of day. And so I have had many sunsets on beaches where I do feel very calm, and I get quite nostalgic generally in life, but I get quite nostalgic in those moments as well. It's a lovely moment of tranquility and reflection, as you say. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I've often wondered, I don't know if this is true, whether there's any like real effect of whether or not you live, like say, on the east coast of the US versus the west coast of the US.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Because on the west coast, which is sort of famed, you almost imagine the west coast, you imagine like a beach and a sunset, because the sun sets over the sea as you're looking west, whereas on the east coast the sun rises typically over the sea if you're looking east. And of course you can still get the lovely colours in the sky, but it's a different kind of thing to be sat on the beach watching the sun go into the sea than it is to be there right early in the morning and watch it coming up. I feel like it's a different sort of environment and mindset you might be in. So I was wondered if there was some macro effect. I don't know if that happens in the UK. People on the east coast beaches versus west coast. I don't know.
Maybe. I certainly get it, because I've been there at kind of sunrises, maybe not sunrises, but early in the morning as well. And it's almost like things are getting going on an east coast beach if you're there for the arrival of the sun, whereas things are calming down as the sun is setting. There's a beach up in Anglesey, a place called Rossniger, and it sits due west, and the sunsets there are absolutely stunning, guaranteed. And I've had many up there. It's just amazing. Just sat there, time, quiet, beautiful. And I think you've probably had those a lot in California as well, Jono. Due west, yeah. It has the same sort of. It's in the same sort of bracket of things like watching fire. Like watching fires are just like transfixing, because they're always changing, and like you don't have to do anything, and these things just keep changing in front of you. And the beach is always changing, the waves are changing, as you say, like watching the sunset, you watch it go down, the light is changing, and you just sit there and take it all in, don't you? It's a lovely feeling. It is magical. Tommy, have you experienced like meaningful times on beaches, or times when you can remember for how they made you feel rather than what you were doing there necessarily?
Yeah, for sure. I think you've just said it beautifully, both of you. Ironically, I look up and there's a picture of Sarah, myself and the kids on a beach just beside the screen here, on a lovely Greek beach. The best beaches in the world, obviously, according to a Greek friend. A lovely evening with, I think, the sun setting quite close behind. And so on the other side of us in the mountains. So,
great places.
I think, Jono, in retrospect, I think you're right. I think the beaches are the most incredible playgrounds. And what I was wondering is, I've spent a lot of time recently going to birthday parties at sort of soft plays, 10-pin bowling, jumping, and I recently heard about one which was like indoor parkour. So, Rob, you've got this to look forward to. When your kids are aged sort of 6 and 5 and above on the weekends,
I don't have any kids.
Well, no, exactly. You've got this to look forward to one day, potentially. So you go to these soft plays, and every year there's like a new concept one. So the new parties are now going to so there's Rock Up recently, which is like a climbing indoor one. And as Jono was talking at the beginning, I was like, I wonder if the next concept will be like a beach, because it's got so much to offer as a potential it seems ridiculous, but I can actually see someone getting away with a warehouse and just filling it with loads of sand and having salty water at one end and going, there we go. That's £20, please.
And making it warm.
Yeah.
Tom, when you say you can see someone getting away with this, I mean, I'm thinking, have I got someone in mind? It's someone who seems to have this idea, feels quite passionate about it.
It's not my business. But it
I
does seem like a good idea. Well, it might be a good idea.
My final point on beaches actually was that they are free, which is also an incredible thing, and that's also what makes them so egalitarian, right? Anybody can go down the beach anytime, and you don't pay. You have to pay. You could taking all the kids down to the beach for a party. I think they'd have a whale of a time, and you wouldn't have had to pay. It's
living in St Albans, it's a bit more tricky, but
exactly.
Would love to live closer to the sea, certainly.
Well, there we go. Thank you, chaps. And as the tide turns and the sun sets on another episode of Sketchplanations, the podcast, we pack up our blankets, fold away the windbreaker, and trek/limp back to the car, having snapped a strap on one of my flip-flops. From here, it's only a half hour to get out of the car park and a short 4 hours through bank holiday traffic to reach home. But no matter the hassle, there's no doubt we'll be back again just as soon as we can. Please do send us stories of times you've had at the beach, what they mean to you, perhaps things you've noticed there. We'd love to know if there's anything we've been missing out on. And you can email us on hello@sketchplanations.com. And we'll be going through last week's correspondence in just a second. But for now, thank you very much for listening. Go well, stay well. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
All music on this podcast series is sourced from the very talented Franc Cinelli. And you can find loads more tracks at franccinelli.com. Lovely.
Very nice. I was just imagining the sun going down as you were saying that.
Lovely.
Yeah. Lovely colours in the sky.
So this will come out 12 weeks after early January. So it won't quite be beach.
No, it'd be springtime. It'd be into March. Yeah.
Well, as you were saying that, though, Rob, I was actually thinking I think one of the reasons why I quite like a winter beach, because you don't have
all the traffic,
you don't have
the
all
car parks,
the people, the traffic,
the litter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could the litter. God, getting sand from between your feet in the car park. Oh, hate beaches.
Horrendous. Unless well, we've all learnt how to do beaches from Benji, right?
Yeah. And Charlie.
You just slap your sock against your foot a few times and it's all gone. And if there's water, and if there is water at the beach, you get in. That's the rules.
You walk slowly in.
I was going to talk about wetsuits, because I feel like wetsuits have transformed things.
Yeah.
Right. They weren't. I mean, wetsuits weren't as common and maybe as affordable, I think, when we were kids.
No.
And I believe O'Neill wetsuits. O'Neill basically invented the wetsuit, and I think he just tried these materials. He was like, well, I wear this in the water, and wow, this really works. And
was this in the 60s? Was it around then? Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. I mean,
it was. I think it was surfing based, wasn't it? It was that was the catalyst for it.
I feel like O'Neill might still be a.
But it's just incredible respect. I feel like, with so much more enjoyment, particularly on the UK beaches, as a result of wetsuits than you ever used to be able to, in a way, because you can get involved so much. And I just think that it's rare to think of something where one invention has so taken off, I think, in a way that has transformed people's experience, and all the SUPing and things like that you can do now. even when it's cold, because there's a wetsuit. Is everything's safer because it's a wetsuit. Kids can stay in the water longer because they've got wetsuits. Like, they're just brilliant.
And you're right, because they weren't around when we were kids on beaches, right? If someone was in a wetsuit, you're going to stand out as being the only person on the beach.
They were a bit, but they're definitely like, because
it
not
as
has
common,
to be the
not
right
as
size,
accessible.
Like a wetsuit is useless if it's a bit too big, or it's really impossible. It's really uncomfortable if it's a bit too small. So certainly when we were young, you didn't get like a new wetsuit ever. You got like 2 in your kind of childhood, maybe, if you were lucky.
I didn't have a wetsuit as a kid.
No, me neither. So I just
but
in the water.
You spent more time on the beach, didn't you, though, Tommy, growing up?
Well, my grandparents had this house down in Cornwall, so we would spend 4, 5, 6 weeks down in Cornwall every year. Yeah. It was amazing.
In a flappy wetsuit.
Still trying to fit into the same
water pouring
shorty wetsuit.
Yeah, exactly. But
1952.
1952?
Yeah, nailed it, both of you.
I mean, what a legacy that is. You imagine what he's managed to do. All of like the endurance sports, the long distance swims and stuff like that, all possible in many ways because of wetsuits in so many more places. Huge amounts of people enjoying that, thanks to them. And
cheers, Mr. O'Neill.
Respect.
Respect.